Good afternoon, everyone. It's 1 o'clock. We're live on YouTube. We do have quorum in that we have full council here, as well as we have 2 representatives from our clerk's department, as well as their CAO and other staff in the audience. Welcome, everyone. Our first order of business is to call this meeting to order at exactly 1 p.m. Next item on our agenda is our land acknowledgement statement. The Township of Hamilton is situated within the traditional territory of the Mississauga, Anishinaabe, and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. Our work on these lands respectfully acknowledges their resilience and their long-lasting contributions to the area now known as the Township of Hamilton. We have a prepared motion to confirm the agenda. It is recommended Council, the Corporation of Township of Hamilton acts as follows: that the agenda for the special council meeting held on September 12th, 2023 be approved. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by John, seconded by Larry. Any questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you. Item 4 on our agenda. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof today?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may, Deputy Mayor Williamson has advised that he has a pecuniary interest with an item on the closed agenda. That's item 4.1, and we'll record it at that time.
Thank you. That shall be recorded in open council, I presume. Presentations. Item 5.1 on our agenda. It's communications tower site location. Presented by Charlene. No, my apologies. Please help me.
Cheyenne. Thank
I
you
was
very
going there
much,
next,
Mr.
but I didn't want to
Mayor.
make 2
Don't
mistakes in a
worry.
row.
I know. I don't know what my parents were thinking. Cheyenne
Well,
Zierler.
I'll
So,
just simply bounce to welcome, and the floor is yours. Forgive my hiccups.
Thank you so much. Do I need to turn this on? Nope. Good. Okay. So thank you very much for having me again here today. You may recall that I was here back in March to discuss one of our proposals for a telecommunications tower. So what I'm doing today is I'm going over a lot of information as well as some other sites that have been explored and requesting some direction in terms of next steps so that we can move forward with the proposed project. So just to go over briefly why there is a need for a tower, as you'll see in some of the later slides, I do go into a little bit more detail in terms of why a tower is required. The coverage and network capacity at this very moment is not adequate enough in order to support the communities, specifically Camborne, which was asked about last time, as well as Cold Springs. As you'll see in the diagram here, when the towers are nearby other structures, also elevations, trees, that kind of thing, shadowing will occur, which prevents the signal from traveling further to the communities. As more and more people begin to gather in certain areas and more people become reliant on our lovely cellular devices, more infrastructure is required in order to maintain the network capacity and coverage objectives that the carriers do have. As you'll see in the diagram on the left, when there is these gaps in coverage and there's more people utilizing the network, then there are more dropped calls. There is a lot less capabilities that the network is able to provide, and thus further infrastructure is required. So as I mentioned, topography and elevations in the area are, of course, a huge hurdle when it comes to site selection. On our drive in, we were noticing and speaking about the beautiful hills in the township of Hamilton, which unfortunately to the cellular network, as beautiful as they may be, they are quite a hurdle when it comes to providing network to the communities themselves. As a reminder, as I mentioned, radio frequency signals do not travel through hills or trees, so they need to have sites that are a high elevation in order to provide the coverage network coverage. Sorry. So the last time I was here, we had spoken about the original location, which you'll see on the left-hand side with the yellow marker. So as you'll see with the different hills in the area, that location was chosen because there is a straight line of sight to the Camborne area. Another question that was proposed or asked of us was why it could not be located at the Cold Springs Memorial Hall. As you'll notice, it is located directly behind that large hill on the right-hand side there. So it's not actually able to meet the coverage objectives that are required for the Camborne area. While it may provide coverage to the north and towards Cold Springs, it doesn't quite reach the objectives that this tower has in terms of providing the network coverage. So just to speak to the existing telecommunication towers in the area, you'll notice that there is a huge gap from the surrounding towers versus the locations that we're looking. So not only are we looking in a specific area in order to meet the coverage objectives and provide the connectivity to the communities, but if we were to move the tower in a certain direction, it would decrease the chance of co-location from other carriers to locate themselves onto the tower itself. So if we were to look further south, we may not be able to obtain Rogers or Bell, who have nearby towers further south, in order to co-locate on the tower. So here you'll see the three locations that I'll be speaking to today, which is our original location, the Cold Springs Memorial Hall, and the new location. So here is a little bit more of a zoomed in area. So location 1, as noted on this map, is the Cold Springs Memorial Hall. Location 2 is our originally proposed location on Burnham Street North. And location 3 is a new site location that we have found off of McBride Road. So just to drive home the point, unfortunately, further infrastructure really is required in order to provide further service to the communities. The hills and the trees really do prove to be a hurdle when trying to find a site that will meet the coverage objectives, and also having a willing landlord and all of the other hurdles that come about when looking for a site. This tower is part of the EORN project, which is the Eastern Ontario Regional Network, the Cellular Gap project. So they have received funding from the government in order to increase the telecommunications infrastructure in this area particularly. So in terms of Cold Springs Memorial Hall, as I mentioned, the topography in the area really prevent it from providing the service that's required for the Camborne area. And majority of the property is regulated by the Conservation Authority. So further permitting and approvals would need to be made if we were to move forward with this site. Typically, when we are working with the conservation authorities, we do try and limit the sites that we put on or near the conservation authorities regulated properties, as you know, they're regulated for a reason, and the less infrastructure that we can put on those properties, the better. This is the video. I don't know if it will. Are you able to click? Oh. Not wanting to work. Well, I can provide it after the presentation as well, but essentially the video was just showing on a Google Maps layout, just showing the impact of the surrounding hills to show the line of sight possibilities for each of the options. So in this case, it was looking at the originally proposed sites off Burnham Street North to the left there, and how it was able to provide a line of sight to the Camborne area in order to increase the coverage there. No. Sorry about that. Technology sometimes does not want to be cooperative for us, as it seems. Next slide. Perfect. So in terms of Cold Springs Memorial Hall, we did an RF study or radio frequency study by a third party, just to showcase what the current coverage is on the left-hand side versus what the coverage might be if the tower was located at the Cold Springs Memorial Hall, which I will also be sharing with you for all of the other sites as well. So as you'll see on the left-hand side, majority of the Camborne area is covered in the orange, which indicates fairly poor coverage. You might be able to make a phone call in those areas, and we can see further north, there's some more red and orange as well. On the left-hand side, we see a lot more green, which is always a good thing. Green and yellow is definitely what we are aiming for when it comes to placing these structures to enable the connectivity for those communities. And as you can see, because of where it's located behind the hill, it does not meet those coverage requirements in order to provide the yellow or green service to the Camborne area. It does a great job for that close vicinity, but the ultimate goal is to increase the coverage capacity for a larger area. Thank you very much. So location 2 is the originally proposed location at 3753 Burnham Street. So majority of the residents that came out to the open house were in favor. We did have one resident who was opposed, specifically because they did not want to see the tower. So we did move it further down the street where you would be able to see just the tip of the tower in the winter months when the leaves were all gone. However, we were directed to look at other locations to ensure that this was the only possible location in the area. It does meet the coverage requirements, but we understood that further was required in terms of a site selection search. So this is another video showing the topography of the area, showcasing the line of sight for the originally proposed sites. And this is the RF coverage. So you can see there's a lot more green and yellow, which again is what we want to see when we're installing this infrastructure. And we can see that it is increasing the service in Camborne. It would meet the requirements. However, we have found another site, which I'll speak to next, which can offer even more coverage to the Camborne area. So our third site here that our site acquisition specialist has found with a willing landlord and has the line of sight to be able to provide the increased coverage to both Cold Springs and Camborne. Like I mentioned, direct line of sight. It has the elevation in order to meet the coverage requirements. And in the RF study that I'm going to show you next, the way that they input the data doesn't actually show what the coverage is going to be like in the area once the equipment is turned in that direction. So I just want that to be noted. But as soon as they complete their optimizations with the other surrounding sites, the Camborne connectivity will increase as well with this structure. One thing to note, sorry, just before we move on, we did hear that there is a neighbor in the area who may be opposed. So I know that that was an issue in the past in trying to find a site with zero opposition. However, given the topography of the area, typically when we have these applications, there are 1, 2, sometimes 10 in opposition, but it's just about balancing the network requirements of the area as well as the community needs, and really trying to get to the heart of why they're opposing the tower. If it's they just don't like towers, they don't like the location, height, look, it varies. So here's an aerial overview of the original site and the alternative site that we would like to move forward with proposing. As you can see, it offers that line of sight in between the two hills directly to Camborne, and it would also do the same heading, I guess, east to Cold Springs as well. As you can see, it's set back a fair amount from the main road there on McBride. And the landlord is willing to have the infrastructure placed on their property as well. So again, this is the RF study where I mentioned, as you can see, they just have a star located on the right-hand side. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get the updated version into the presentation when I had to have the deadline last week. However, when they make the optimizations on the surrounding towers, as well as optimizing the equipment, pointing it down towards Camborne, that whole area is going to be even more yellow and green. So in conclusion, before we hop onto the question and answer, I just want to reiterate that infrastructure is required in the area. Unfortunately, there's a huge gap in terms of what's available for co-location of carriers, and strategically placing this infrastructure to encourage co-location of the existing and surrounding carriers is crucial. I think last time I was here, it was mentioned that, we see towers everywhere. Why do we need more? That's why it's important to really place these towers where they're needed and where we can have multiple providers on them, so we don't need further infrastructure in the future. So that brings me to a request for direction in terms of next steps. So we would like to either proceed with our originally proposed location where we've done public consultation. However, the other option, which is proving to be a little bit better possibly for everyone in this situation, is to move forward with public consultation for the newly proposed site. That's everything from me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Questions from council members? Mark, I think your hand went up first, please.
Thank you. Thank you for coming back. And I'm glad you have come back. I mean, it's a reality that these two areas need better internet service. But I've been looking at your maps and I'm having a really hard time seeing the coverage that you're trying to display. I mean, the one shows you talk Camborne and then you're in Cold Springs to begin with. So I don't really see a map on here that shows both, how the coverage, if it's increased, decreased, and so forth. Do you actually have something, or will you be able to show us something that will have both on there?
I do. I have a much larger map which shows the existing towers and the coverage that would be able to be provided to both areas. I don't have it printed out with me, but I can provide. How would it be best for me to provide that to you?
Even if it could be sent to us?
Absolutely.
And then we'd be able to see, and maybe put Camborne, the name Camborne and the name Cold Springs on the map.
Absolutely.
So it's a little more clear.
Would it be best to do that for the originally proposed location and the newly proposed location?
It
to
would
see
be
the
nice to
difference?
have, yes, we can see a direct comparison, because from your maps, I can't tell whether Cold Springs got any better
I
from the
see.
change.
Mhm.
It looks, or if it just stayed the same, or whether it's, it didn't increase at all. So
Yes, the reason I had focused on Camborne today was because it was a question that came up last time and how there was a great need for Camborne specifically. So I can definitely share that.
I think both, because I mean, if you
Mhm.
drive, and will this help cellular? It'll help cellular
Cellular, yes.
and internet both, right?
There is an option for the internet equipment to be put onto the tower, but right now,
It's
the
strictly cellular?
equipment will be cellular.
Because I know driving even through Cold Springs, you do lose cellular.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can definitely provide that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
you, Councillor.
Traditionally, I try to ask questions last, but mine sort of follows Councillor Lovshin, so forgive me, Bruce. There are many carriers of cellular functions. Would this particular tower that we hear is going to improve cellular only improve cellular for the people that are with the company that's on the tower?
So short answer, yes. The way that the cellular providers work is they have certain budgets for the year. So now that we're ending the 2023 year, moving into 2024, they may already have their budgets in place for which towers they can allocate equipment to. So typically how these projects run is we have an anchor tenant, which is guaranteed to be on the tower as soon as it is built. In this case, it is Rogers. However, we have our carrier relations who has weekly meetings with all of the carriers working to get them co-located on the tower. As you can see from the maps, this is set far out enough away from the other carrier sites where if they are looking to increase service in a certain area, or in some cases compete with the carrier who is providing service, they will then want to co-locate on a tower. If they were to submit their own application for building their own tower, if they didn't want to share, they would need to provide justification as to why they couldn't locate on the tower. And something that Shared Network really strives to do is increase and encourage that co-location by building the towers with the capacity to already host up to 3 carriers up above on the tower and as well within the compound, which proves to be an issue for some of the other carrier built sites.
Bruce, come back to you.
Thanks for your presentation.
Mhm.
And I understand why you focused on Camborne because of a question. I just wondered about, what about to the north? Because there are a few residents north of where this new tower might be, and there are definitely gaps in that area. So will that increase the coverage in that area too? Like, is it a 360 thing?
It is a 360 thing. It's not necessarily a perfect circle because of the hills, which is why we try and get it to the highest elevation in order to meet all of the communities in the area. But typically, a 60 to 65 meter tower will have a range of 6 kilometers or so. So it should at least be able to increase the service further north to those communities as well.
Oh,
I just
sure,
wanted-
Mark,
I
let's
just
come
wa-
back to
sorry, I
you.
just wanted to follow up a little bit on what you had said, because I didn't realize that it was only going to cover one company, because when I originally read this, it was an EORN project. So I thought an EORN project would expand beyond one project, beyond one company.
Yes, sorry.
Am I not right in
So EORN was awarded to Rogers. So Rogers is in charge of increasing the network. I think I mentioned over 300 sites there, and this will be a part of their tower build that they then need to provide to the federal government as to how they're trying to increase the network in the area. What's great about them not building their own tower is that it's further opportunity for other carriers to co-locate. If Rogers was to build their own tower as part of the
I see.
project, then they might not be able to share the tower, have compound space or tower height in order to provide those objectives for the other carriers. However, the anchor tenant in this case is Rogers.
Okay.
The tower is not being built for Rogers only. It's not being sold to Rogers. It is going to be owned by Shared Network, and our goal, as I mentioned, is co-location. We want to encourage multiple carriers to go onto the tower, which is why we might not just choose the first person that might say yes, because we need to consider whether the site is strategic in having co-location of the other carriers as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Come over here, Larry, please.
Thanks, Ryan. That's a good presentation. So when it comes down to it, the third location that you've now identified is probably the best location for that area.
Based off of the site acquisition, knocking on doors and trying to speak with people who is willing to have a tower on their property and also provides that line of sight coverage, that is proving to be the best location.
Okay, because that gives us a broader reach, doesn't it? Maybe I could just ask our chief and Parks and Rec and such who have problems down in the Cold Springs area for communication. Will this new tower, which reaches down to Colburn now, will that improve or enhance our coverage for cell service? Because I know there's always been that issue, but I'm just wondering if that's going to be a benefit to us to get down to Colburn then, or Colburn. Camborne, sorry. So this would sort of cover that, and from a fire standpoint, it'd be the same, or?
You're eliminating the gap, so for taking a similar action. Obviously, I want to make carrier.
So are,
We take that and make it green. And we've all, as workers, driven through that. I don't think it's possible, not on the Bell network, maybe someone else's. It's not possible to leave here driving.
and are we on Rogers right now?
He currently runs Bell for the.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not sure.
So it wouldn't help us then, right, currently?
And I guess that would be, if I can have input, what's the timeline generally on the buy-in of the other carriers, and I know you recognize the budgetary
The
process,
budgetary.
but is that like a next year thing or just eight? And again,
Usually, sorry.
You've seen the strategic
Wait,
placement of the
no, I
tower
know.
Mhm,
Yeah.
and being single source, and I appreciate what you're trying to do,
mhm.
but what's to stop Bell? I'm gonna be the devil's advocate coming in and saying, you don't site one because it's the best. I'm going back to site two and there's a Bell tower.
That's a great question. I'm going to touch on a few things. I know when I did the public open house at the Cold Springs Memorial Hall, there was absolutely zero service. So I can attest to that definitely. In terms of providing cellular and municipal options as well, we've worked with a lot of municipalities for locating specific equipment, if that would be helpful on the tower itself. And in terms of Bell creating or building their own tower, through the process, because the government wants to eliminate this not sharing process, they right away, you need to look at co-location. So when they submit an application to the township, they would need to provide sufficient justification as to why they could not co-locate on the tower. Given that we have ample space for them up top as well within the compound, those are usually two of the biggest things why they might state that they can't share with each other. And then they would need to build their own tower, but right off the bat, we're providing all of the space that would be required. So it would then be up to council and the township when reviewing that application as to whether the justification would be enough. It's one of those instances where you build it and they will come. A lot of the time, the process can take a while to actually go through the application process, public consultation, then you get into doing your soils and winds, submitting the application to the government, then starting the construction process, getting the equipment on. It can take some time. So if there's already a structure in place, ready to go, it speeds up the process for the other carriers as well to co-locate.
Thank you. Follow up, Larry?
Thank you, Shannon. So I guess my question is that now we'll have to go through a new public process, right? And you had said you've already identified one objection. Is that from a resident or is that from another organization or group?
That was from a resident in the area. So I know
Okay.
last time I was here, it was asked that we find a site with zero opposition, which typically we don't have any applications that have zero opposition. And we try and work with the community to address the concerns that they have. However, I just wanted to bring that to light because I know that that was an issue with the last site as well. Even though we had majority in support of the location, we had one in opposition. So I just would like to get some feedback as to whether that will truly be a deterrent in moving forward with this structure and proposal.
Thanks, Shannon.
John, question? I just have, I guess, one short question. EORN is not limited to cell service objectives. It's also, again, if I'm making it sound like a statement, I'm not trying to do that. It's also, is it not, interested in internet service as well? But at this point in time, we have no knowledge of any carrier for internet. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I guess a follow-up, even on my own part, you are aware that there's a relatively new tower 800 feet, 1,000 feet south of your proposed third site.
If it is the structure that is just across the way there from the site that you're referencing, I believe that is an ExploreNet site. They built it very short enough to just put small amount of equipment on. So that site would need to be completely restructured, new foundation, new tower put up in order to reach the objectives. I drove past it earlier this morning.
Okay, thank you. Any further follow-up? Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much for your time.
I'm going to turn to staff here quickly if I could. And Jennifer, I sense that you may wish to say a few words at this moment in time. If I'm incorrect, just let me know.
I don't really have anything much to add, except that the request from the Party Shared Network Canada is to get council's direction with respect to whether they want to proceed with the original site or whether they want to proceed with public consultation on the second site, which they believe to be a better site. One of the things that they didn't mention, and whether it's relevant to council or not, is the new site on, I believe it's Bowman Road, is located on the Oak Ridges Moraine. I don't think it's relevant to the discussions because a great portion of our municipality is on the Oak Ridges Moraine, and it's at the top of a hill, and there's no regulated lands around it. There's no environmental features on it, and the proposed tower would be located within a cluster of existing buildings. So there would really be no impact. That is one thing that when looking at land use that we do consider, though. So I reviewed the material provided by the applicant, and that she seemed to confirm what my understanding was, except with the third location on Bowman Road. It looks like a heat diagram that's prepared with the application. When looking at that diagram, it didn't appear to me as if it was as good as the original location, but it seems to me that they have some subsequent testing or analysis that suggests it's actually better than the first one. So that is all I have. And if council has any requests or for me with respect to the communication protocol or process from now, I'd be happy to talk about it.
Any questions for Jennifer? Mark?
It's not so much a question, but I'd still like to see that map to be sent to us, and we're meeting next week, so I'd like to make our decision next week rather than today to see what, the coverage is, because I don't see it for Camborne on that.
Okay.
Or Cold Springs, sorry, on that final mapping.
I'm just going to ask Emily, in the presentation, there's those, I don't know what to call them. They're not heat diagrams, but they're coverage diagrams, I guess. Those ones. Okay, that site is
I'd like to see a site to compare the two.
All of-
and have
all of
both
them.
you don't have Camborne and Cold Springs on that.
I think
map.
Camborne and Cold Springs is on that. Cold Springs is where it says Cold Springs Hall, and it's the green area right around it. And I think that black circle to the south is supposed to indicate Camborne. Is that correct?
I can tell you that, Jennifer. Look at the configuration of the road. That's
Yeah,
Camborne.
That's Camborne. So the
Camborne?
black circle is Camborne. And so if you compare the three sites,
Is that all
what's
of Cam?
within the circle?
Is that all of Camborne, like the village of Camborne itself?
Well, it probably
much of
pretty
it?
much covers it. I
Okay.
mean, very rarely do you have a perfect circle covering a community, but it
Yes.
probably covers the most of it. Yes.
Okay, well, that's what I want
Yeah.
clarity on. 'Cause I
So you
wasn't-
can compare
Sure.
that
Okay,
between the three different options that they've provided. So it's the black circle is the Camborne and Cold Springs is the area up to the north.
Forgive me, everyone. I think we need to cut this short to be able to move on in the agenda. We're going to keep in mind that the motion that I'm about to read, which you may or may not have, is to move this forward to next week to get a staff report and come back to us. I don't believe that it would be proper for council to give direction of which site you should choose. However, I think there's a feeling in the room that I'm sure you got. And we'll leave it at that. Moving on under 5.1, the Township of Hamilton acts as follows. The council received the presentation from Shared Towers, Inc. for communications tower, and that the matter be referred to staff for view and staff to bring a report and recommendation to the September 19th, 2023 council meeting. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Bruce, seconded by Mark. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you again. Item 6.1 on our agenda, Community Recognitions Awards. We do have a prepared motion to get it on the floor that Council of Corporation of the Township of Hamilton enacts as follows: that the Community Recognitions Awards Advisory Committee minutes from July 27th, 2023 be received for information. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by John, seconded by Larry. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you. Item 6.2, staff report regarding Community Recognitions Awards Committee funding request. Again, to get it on the floor, it is recommended the Council of Corporation Township of Hamilton enacts as follows: that council receive report CD 2023-13, Community Recognitions Awards and Volunteer Appreciation Event for information, and that the event planned presented by the Community Recognitions Awards Advisory Committee for funding of the awards and volunteer appreciation event be approved in the amount of $4,250. Could I have a motion, please? Moved by Larry, seconded by Mark. Any questions or comments?
Just one quick
Mark,
question.
please.
Where's our $4,200 coming from? Is it reserves or is it coming from a? Do we have a
Through
budget?
you, Mr. Mayor, we currently do have a light item available for volunteer recognition. In 2023, we are requesting that that 4250 be utilized from the existing funds that we have in volunteer and staff recognition or appreciation.
So is it part of our budget? process?
Current part of our budget for 2023.
Thank you.
I can't do.
Please, go ahead.
If I can answer, Mayor, Chip, the intention was to say we have a line item for that amount. We believe we can manage it within a year, so we're not having to increase budget. It was to be clear that those expenditures normally occur for staff appreciation as well, and we expect some of the expenditures to occur later this year with events still to be held. So that being said, we think we can manage this as pressure or manage within the budget if not identified as a pressure. And then as part of the budget process for 2023, have council deliberate over how much to be allocated to that line item.
Okay, thank you.
Larry, please.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make it clear that I know that this hasn't been a line item on the, for instance, this rewards recognition. But I think it's important we identify funding for staff recognition, which is an important aspect of our operation. But I think it's important that we start to engage the community. And these awards, as you saw earlier in the year when we recognized Kathy Concrete as Senior of the Year, it filled this hall, the council room. And I think that just shows the kind of dedication that we need to appreciate and illustrate to our community that we appreciate the work that they're doing within our communities. And I think we should be looking at this amount this year, but also to maybe expand it for other years in the future and make it a big celebration more than just in the council room as the committee has suggested. So I just wanted to make that clear that I think it's a well worth the budgetary line item. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further questions? I'll simply say thank you, Larry. And I'll add that as recent as this past weekend, I received positive comments about that event of that Senior of the Year award presentation. So I think it was well received and I was glad to be part of it. Okay. It's been moved, it's been seconded, it's been discussed. All those in favor of the motion? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 7.1 under corporate services. Bylaw 2023-06 refreshment vehicle license request. We do have a prepared motion. It is recommended the Council of the Corporations Township of Hamilton enact as follows. The council receives report 2023-06 refreshment vehicle license request, and that council approves the refreshment vehicle request from Lisa Dove, Hot Dog Boss, for the proposal at 9313 County Road 28, and the council directs the municipal clerk to issue the new refreshment vehicle license and collect the license fee. To get it on the floor, could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by John, seconded by Bruce. The report. I have to smile a bit. This is my copy of the report, so it must be a big topic. This report is from our manager of development services, Tim Geronimus. Tim, would you like to walk us through this, or would you just simply like to ask questions if there are any? Larry, please.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I just have one question. Is the Lisa Dove, is she a current resident within the township or the county?
Within Bewdley, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
You said,
Mark,
if I could just ask a quick question too, the application's coming in very late in the season. Is there any break for that? Or are they charged full fee, or how's that work?
So right now, we don't have any break in our current process. It was discussed with the applicant. There were some challenges with some of the other agency approvals, but they still wish to continue. And it does help for any renewal, because then they no longer need to go to council, and that can be approved by staff the following year.
So next year she could start in April or whenever. Before. So this is only good until,
October 31st.
yeah, thank you, Tim.
okay, we have oh, sorry, John.
When you say agency, other agencies approval, they have concerns. We're talking about the health unit and whatever else that's been involved.
Yep, there's a number of, whether it's the county of Northumberland, we have our own fire department that reviews it. There's health unit is one of them. That was, I believe, the latest approval that we received. But yeah, we all reviewed the application, and some of the items, they just didn't meet the criteria on the first time around.
Okay, so we're the last step in the destination of her opening.
Final
the
approval.
Hot dog
That's correct.
stand. Okay, thank you very
Yep.
much.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? Bruce, question?
Yes. And they have some new proposed development that we might see beginning of next year on the north end of that property.
Being no further questions, it's been moved and seconded. Could we ask for the vote, please? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Tim. Closed session is next on our agenda. Pardon me? Motion to move in the closed session to discuss matters permitted under the Municipal Act, Section 239(2)(f). Advice that is a subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, re land use planner. The motion is, it is recommended Council of the Corporation Township of Hamilton acts as follows. It's a special county meeting held on September 12th, 2023, go into closed session at 1:44 p.m. under the Municipal Act, Section 239(2)(f). Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Bruce, seconder, please. John, any questions? All those in favor of the motion? Thank you, carried. We'll take